The first question as we think about efficiency and equity is thinking about who is involved in this market. Who are the potential members who could benefit from the market? And in our simple model, the way we've developed it so far, there are really only two members that are involved in the market. We have the consumers and we have the producers. So when we're thinking about efficiency and equity, we have to take these two groups into account, right? We would like to take into account the consumers, and we want to take into account the producers. And in our economy, the total surplus that's generated by the economy as a whole is going to be the sum of the two. So let's start thinking about each of these groups separately. And I will start with the consumers. So as we think about the consumers, what is the benefit that consumers are getting from the market? Well, one way of thinking about this is going back to our demand curve and understanding what the demand curve is. The demand curve is a reflection of the willingness to pay by the consumers. Another way of saying this is the demand curve measures the marginal benefit to the consumers from purchasing an additional unit. We're measuring here marginal benefit in dollars because the demand curve represents how much people are willing to pay for an additional unit of a good. Suppose, for example, that we're talking about the market for bread in a particular location in a particular point in time. Here is someone who is willing to pay a very high price for a loaf of bread. Why are they willing to pay a high price for a loaf of bread? It could be that they're very hungry and really want the bread. It could be that they've been fasting for a day and just that smell of bread is overpowering and they really are dying to have it. Or it might be that they're very rich. And because they're very rich, they're willing to pay a very high price for bread just because they have the money for it. Whatever the reason is, this is their marginal benefit from this loaf of bread. And just for the sake of example, let's say they're willing to pay $10 for this loaf of bread. But there are many other people who are willing to pay lower prices. For example, here's someone who's willing to pay $9, and maybe this person is willing to pay $8, and so on and so forth. And maybe there are even some people who are not willing to pay anything at all. Here's someone who has a marginal benefit of 0. Why do they have a marginal benefit of 0? Maybe they don't like bread. Maybe they have a gluten allergy and the bread is just not healthy for them. Or maybe they don't have the money. Right? This marginal benefit is your actual willingness to pay for the bread. And if you don't have any money in your pocket, you're not willing to pay. Now suppose that we're looking at a market price of $4 per loaf of bread. Who will end up buying this loaf of bread? All the people who are willing to pay more than $4. Who won't buy bread? Anyone who's not willing to pay $4, right? Anyone below this price of $4. This person here, remember this person was willing to pay $10 for a loaf of bread. When they walked into the store willing to pay $10, they found out that the price was only $4. Did they pay $10 or did they pay $4? Obviously, they paid $4. They paid the lowest price they were asked to pay. And they walked out of the store with an extra $6. What do I mean by an extra $6? They walked out of the store $6 happier than they were before because they were willing to pay $10 and they ended up only paying $4. And if you think of it, that's the case for anyone who is willing to pay more than $4. So if we add up the area underneath the demand curve and above the price, we find the willingness to pay over and above what consumers paid for the product. And we call this consumer surplus. So again, consumer surplus is the willingness to pay or the marginal benefit of consumers over and above the price that they paid, summed over all the units that were traded. And graphically, this is the area underneath the demand curve and above the price up to the quantity that's traded in the market. And this consumer surplus, this is the consumer side of the market, how much consumers are gaining.